Om. Om. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahavirindravavahe Tejasvinavaditamastu ma vitvishavahe. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwara Gureva Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Chinmayam Vyapiyat Sarvam Lokyam Sacharacharam Padam Narshitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Om Shri Chinmaya Sat Namaha. Om Shri Chinmaya Sat Gurave Namaha. Om Shri Chinmaya Sat Gurave Namaha. Satchidananda Rupaya Vishnu Utpatyata Hetave Apatraya Vinashaya Shri Krishnaya Vayam Numaha. Shri Krishnaya Vayam Numaha. Shri Krishna Sharanam Mama. Shri Krishna Sharanam. So we started on the story of Vijay, and we remember this is being spoken by Shukdev to King Parikshit. And even as Shukdev had started speaking the Bhagavatam, Bhagwan, and says that please come and reside in my words. And here too, Sutta, when he's explaining what Shukraj says, he explains that in the Bhagavatam, the blessing is that we experience Sri Krishna in our hearts, and he enters always through the ears. So even if we think of all the senses, we see, but what we see will be a form. And then if we know and understand and that there's so much more than a form, even just seeing the form, the mind is lifted, but then to lift the mind even more. But taste, touch, smell, we may associate things with Bhagwan, like Garbati we might associate with Bhagwan, but he can't enter. He enters through our ears, into our hearts. And so, Shukdev Maharaj prays, Bhagwan, please come and reside in my words. And here the analogy we're doing Canto 4 now, the analogy is given of Garuda. And so, Bhagwan's Vahana, and he sits on Garuda because when Garuda flaps its wings, we hear the Vedas. Specifically, Sama Veda, which is very beautiful to hear. And so Bhagwan sitting on Garuda is likened to Bhagwan sitting on words. And through those words, as we hear them, enters into us and goes down to our hearts. And so Shukdev Maharaj invokes Bhagwan in speaking the Bhagavatam for him to come and resides there. And the essence that we have already been emphasizing is Bhagwan has said to absorb our mind. We saw it earlier in the first canto also, but this morning specifically, when answer the question how to live, how to die, absorb the mind. And too, an example is quoted by Bhishma Pitama. Bhishma Pitama lived this extraordinarily long life. He lived watching 3 generations, 4 generations almost. So a very, very long life, but not just long. His adherence to dharma and his steadfastness in performing his duty and upholding values. That we at the very end of his life, when he's lying on that bed of arrows. So during the war, he's fighting, so the arrows have pierced him from the front, but he's fallen on his back. How strong, I mean, even if you think about it, it would have been excruciating. That one, firstly, it's gone through his body. 2 arrows are not like flat. So they're piercing him constantly while he's lying there. And he said to Krishna, when Krishna finally comes to him and standing in front of him, thinking of you, I felt no pain. And here he himself explains that both can't stay in the heart at the same time. When our heart is filled with love, pain is squeezed out. When our heart is filled with pain, love is squeezed out. And so I have been able to lie here on this bed of arrows because I'm thinking of you. And then he's quite demanding as a devotee. And since you took so long to come, now you stand here until I have breath. But he starts with saying, before he asks Bhagwan a question, my entire life I have guarded my mind. And it's an interesting analogy that he uses. The way a father will guard his daughter. Kept it so protected. Safe, pure. Now this mind which I have kept in this way, again like a father, I hand over to you. As a father hands over her daughter in marriage. So beautiful, no? To marry our mind to Krishna. And then he goes on to say, I'm sure you don't want my mind. Bhishma Pitama's relationship with Krishna is so sweet. They were so casual and there was this absolute acceptance. I'm sure you don't want my mind, but it's yours anyway. Now you dissolve it. And here too, we see this as seekers, we know how hard, it's so hard to control it only, but to dissolve it, to totally surrender so that it's him alone. And so that last bit, Bhishmacharya now gives to Krishna to do. And look at Krishna, Bhishmacharya leaves. So to immerse our mind in that truth, then we saw the whole explanation of all these creations and creations and creations. There's universes upon universes, and time is working cyclically, and at different points in time, different creations are getting created. And in all of that, we feel we get lost. So often we'll hear devotees saying, Bhagwan, why have you thrown this samsara? Just there to suffer. Sometimes that's how we'll feel. And so a story is narrated of a friend who hasn't heard from his friend in a day or two, and so he goes looking. And he knocks on the door, and he's not answering. Rings, today we will ring on mobile, right? Ring where you can hear the phone ringing, he's not picking up. Finally, he walks around to the back of the house, climbs through the window, and sees the friend had fainted. And dust has collected, and then he goes to look for medicine. There, the fridge is empty, there's no food. So first thing he does is bathes the friend, changes his clothes, changes the sheet, gets medicine, feeds it to him, goes back out, buys food, and then waits for the friend to be revived. And when the friend does finally come around, he asks, "How did you get in?" And he said, "Through the window." "You came through the window?" And the friend replies, "I didn't need to think. This is my home only, right?" We feel Bhagwan's thrown us in samsara and left us there. But through words, he enters in our hearts and cleans it, bathes us, dresses us, and nurtures us. We don't even realize when he's come in. We listen to some japa, some chant, some story quote, some snippet of satsang somewhere. He enters. Doesn't wait for our permission. He will give us choice to turn to him, not to turn to accept, not to accept, to surrender, not to surrender. That choice, he has given us freedom, but he'll come. He will most certainly come into our hearts. And now we started the story this morning already, but actually, fourth canto starts with Shukdev Maharaj talking about once Krishna leaves Vidur. Again, we go back to the Bhagavatam. A lot of Canto 3, there was references back to Bhagavatam character because remember, King Parikshit is Arjuna's grandson. Vidur is Dhritarashtra and Pandu's brother who left on yatra because he didn't want to be a part. So he is working and he meets Uddhav, who is a great, great, great devotee of Sri Krishna. And it is said about Uddhav that when Krishna was alive, Uddhav's with him all the time, like a tail. And if it was a sari, he'd be holding on to the pallu. And he didn't eat out of his own plate. He only ate what was left in Krishna's plate. He never bought clothes for himself. He only wore clothes that Krishna didn't want to wear anymore. And everything, love and commitment and devotion to Krishna is beautifully elaborated in the stories. And so Vidur seeing Uddhav says, "Please teach me what Krishna taught you before leaving." And this is also so beautiful. Uddhav answers, "Krishna remembered you." Vidur, gone off on yatra, nobody knew where he was. Krishna's leaving. Krishna said goodbye to everyone he needed to say goodbye to, but Vidur was nowhere there. So he leaves a full message for Vidur. And the message is with Maitreya Rishi. And when he finds him, now their conversation about Bhakti and Bhagavan is being narrated here in the fourth canto. So first we had Sutta talking to Shonak. Then we have Naraji's, now that conversation is over. Then we have Shukdev Maharaj talking to King Parikshitji, and conversation that Maitreya Rishi is talking to Vidur. And why do they do this in the Bhagavatam? They keep referring to different gurus and giving the answers in reference to. It's one of the styles of the Puranas that sometimes we get not the students of the Bhagavatam for sure, but regular students sometimes think, my question, and I'm so intelligent for thinking this question, But also gurus can feel, I'm so great, I can answer your question. And so this cycle of this guru asked, this student asked, the answer is to remind both Shishya and Guru that this knowledge has been there from the beginning, doesn't belong to anyone. Today, when people claim that they thought of something, it's very, very, very clear in the Puranas that everything that can be thoughted has already been thoughted by Vedavyasa. No original idea that can be thoughted. Gurudev used the word thoughted, so it's a word. So now coming back to in Vaikunt, Jay and Vijay they had seva bhav, but afterwards power corrupts. They had the power to say no. But Bhagwan would never say no. Never. Available to us at any given point in time. So maybe you might say, no, they wanted him to rest, but he doesn't need rest. And so them saying no is their arrogance. If we are truly a das, if I am truly wanting to serve, then I only serve well when I have understood what my master wants. And my master, the Bhagwan, wants the doors always be open. So now that's arrogance that has crept into them, and therefore this curse. So the Sanat Kumars also, why did they get angry? Actually, they have never gotten angry in all of time before this curse, and never gotten angry in all of time after this curse. And so that their experience can only be Bhagwan's Leela. So they said, their words are truth, slogan. Pride has no place in heaven. Pride is an asuric quality, and so off you go to be born asuras, because pride has no place in heaven. Now the principle is perfect. It's a story and it's a lovely story, but here we must remember the message being taught to us. Even when we want to experience heaven, we have to make sure zero pride. The humility is very hard to foster in our hearts because it's a very tricky quality too. I'm humble makes me unhumble. So so what should we do then to make sure pride doesn't come? Stay in constant gratitude. And not just for what I have, but that I can only even be this person today because parents' blessings, grandparents' blessings, gurus' blessings, teachers' blessings, friends' support, sibling support, and wider community support, infrastructure, resources, and talents that I may have, punya of some ancestor, maybe not even mine. Sometimes I won't even know who to be thanking for some of the things I have. And so that I can't take credit. I am intelligent. I was given so much knowledge. That's why I can be intelligent. I am talented. So many people invested in training that so that it can flourish. And so to stay in that constant mind of gratitude, that I alone work to make me me. Whatever success I have experienced is not mine alone. So back to Jay and Vijay. They got cursed to come be asuras. Now that noise, Bhagwan came out and said, what's going on? And immediately at seeing Bhagwan, Jay and Vijay felt so ashamed. When the Sanat Kumars cursed, you get like this. Because when you're already proud and somebody says, we are. But the minute they see Bhagwan, there is, What have we done? And the minute the Sanat Kumar see Bhagwan, same thing. What have we done? Like, it's Bhagwan's servants and we have cursed them. Like, we can't go into somebody else's fire people. It's like, like that's pride on our part. And so immediately the Sanat Kumars asked for blessings. Even before Jay and Vijay apologized and asked for forgiveness, the Sanat Kumars are like, we are so sorry that we have done this and we've cursed. They are your servants. The right thing should have been to come to you and to talk to you. And Bhagwan says, what you did is correct. This is your house only. Like, this love that Bhagwan has for his bhaktas is the theme of every story in the Bhagavatam. The Sanat Kumars didn't do any wrong. It's if you have cursed, it's because that is what is in destiny, in their naseeb, in there. Nothing but my will. Nothing but my will can come out of your mouth, telling the Sanat Kumars and appeasing them of that little bit of regret and anxiousness that they felt. And then the next breath he says, but I have to take responsibility for the servants. If they've misbehaved, then the punishment has to equally go to me as it goes to them. So if they are cursed to go down to earth, then I will also go down to earth. And nobody else will kill them except me. Now, whose side is he taking? His bhaktas got cursed and he's going with them. And then he says even more, and actually, because as master, I have more responsibility to make sure that dharma is being followed. So they going down thrice, I will go down 4 times. Yeah. Chapter 9 of the Gita, he says, I am not partial, I love everyone equally. In this scenario, you can see it so clearly. Even the one who has done wrong, he is blessing. Even the one who cursed, he is blessing. And Lakshmi ji got exactly what, except that she'll have to come down with him because she's not going to let him go alone. And then the Sanat Kumars, the one who said the curse, he said he'll also take responsibility for that moment of inner alertness. And so Jay and Vijay come down as Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha. And we're going to the story now in Canto 4. Then they come down as Ravana and Kumbhakarna. Now at that point, Sanat Kumar as Vibhishan. Why? To constantly remind them to love Bhagwan. They were cursed because arrogance can only come if we forget Bhagwan. So what he realizes, Santa Mahatma, instead of cursing, just reminded them to love Bhagwan. So since I didn't do this now, I will take birth when they are Earth, Ravana and Kumbhakarna, to constantly remind them to love Bhagwan. And we see that's exactly what Vibhishan does. And when come as Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu, he comes as Prahlad. And so Prahlad too is constantly reminding Hiranyakashipu to love Bhagwan and becomes instrumental in seeing Bhagwan. And then the last avatar, when he comes, Pal and Dandava, and Sanat Kumar said, anyway, that's their last one. After that, they're coming back to Swarg. I won't go that time. As Prahlad and as Vibhishan, what a beautiful model of a bhakta they show us. So, Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha have to be born. And we've already seen the story of destroyed because of the overlap of time, right? Going back in time, but we actually also changing to a different creation. So there's two things. There's yasas and there's kalpas. So kalpa is one cycle of time. In the Bhagavatam, there's mention of different kalpas, different cycles of time. And there's also a mention of different universes. And so if your Sanskrit's not good, you can get very confused. Luckily for us, Guruji has given us this in English. So there is a great rishi by the name of Kashyapa. And he is married to Diti and Aditi. And why is this important? Because this is in the beginning of creation. In that creation, this incident happens. The word Diti means one who divides and separates. From Diti comes all the asuras. Aditi, in front of a word means no. So the opposite, one who unites. And from Aditi comes all the devas. Now just in the name you can learn so much. What makes us asuric-like? When we divide, when we separate. We will see it even in families, in the cutthroat business world. And most importantly, remember in our mind. When our mind is divided, we have conflicting desires and loyalties. Asuric. We feel it because it's so much stress when we ourselves are divided. Stress that we will feel. And it comes out. But when we are united in our goal, in our loyalty, in our adherence to virtue, we feel strong. We feel steady. And then, of course, when we help unite people, keep things together, there's a lot of fulfillment, Devic qualities. Anyways, Diti gets overwhelmed with lust at Sandhya time. Sandhya is sunset time. In scriptures, it is very clearly stated when are appropriate times and inappropriate times for all actions, not just this action. So this hour is meant for prayer and not meant for indulgence. Diti approaches her husband Kashyap and he says, not now, later. But when lust overwhelms, she is not able to control and she becomes quite demanding. And then he thinks, why is she behaving like this? It's simple to understand. This is not the right time. And then he actually thinks this must be the Lord's will. And so he gives in to, and when it's over, usually after the emotion we go through is over, she herself realizes, very ashamed that what did I do? I could have just waited. Why did I also behave so badly? And she says, please protect me. And his answer is so detached. What you were doing is wrong. So now you face the consequences. Even though this Kashyap Rishi is highly, highly detached as a husband. That's why he's a rishi. And then they wonder why these rishis were allowed to marry. They were so detached. And so she asks, what are the consequences? And immediately he says, the two children that will be born of you from this will be the most horrendous asuras ever. And plague the world with misery. And so can you imagine her poor heart And then he felt little bit compassion seeing her face, but Bhagwan will kill them. And the minute she hears, but Bhagwan will kill them, relief. Then it's okay. Because if Bhagwan frees them, they'll be free. They will go to Vaikunth, they will be fine. And then again she gets this, oh, Rishi will curse them, right? Because if a Brahmana will curse you, then you don't get freedom. And I'm not sure what Kashyap replies, but I don't think they were cursed any of their lifetimes. And they are indeed freed by Bhagwan's promise to Jay and Vijay. So we have seen this story of Hiranyaksha. They do much tapas. A long, long story about how much tapas they do, and they grow very, very, very powerful. And then their world dissolves because of how horrendous all their sins are, and that's why they come into this new creation, and the earth has been buried in the ocean. And so here creation is starting, but they have already done years of tapas and have already become very, very strong. And Vara Avatar saves the earth. Now this whole section 4 is to glorify and to emphasize that in Bhagwan's Leela, there is this power of action. He uses action, and we relate to it because we also think that only things get done through action, but actually there's two ways in which Bhagwan manifests. One is through action and through knowledge. And so within this one canto, the avatars that take place where he acts and the avatars that take place where he imparts only wisdom. And so even though the story seems quite different, we go straight into another story of the birth of Kapil Muni. And this also is an elaborate story, and we will do it fairly quickly. So Manu and Shatarupa now, so the earth was saved, and Manu and Rupa now come to live on the earth, and they have a few children. And one of them is a daughter, Devahuti. Brahmaji at the same time keeps creating mind-born children. And he hasn't gotten this formula quite right of how to create children. I mean, they mind-born. Like when we create children, we don't know which genes they're going to pick and what vasanas they're going to come. But Brahmaji is creating, but it's actually specified that when Brahmaji creates, he can't create just what he wants to. He has to create from the pool of jivas that are be born at that point in time. And in fact, Naraji asked him how he creates, and he says, what I do is 10% of what Bhagwan can do in terms of creating. Yeah. He can't actually create anything new. He just uses the resources, and like how when we cook, we don't build the ingredients or the spice, but we put it together and it can come out pretty good. In the same way, Brahmaji is using resources that are already available to him. So he created Daksha. He created Daksha, and we're going to put Daksha on hold. Remember I told you his formula of how to applies to Daksha as well. And Daksha we next canto. Maybe we'll see it today if time permits. And he creates Karadam Rishi. Yes, that's how we say his name. Now here, Puja Gurudev with humor, Brahmaji created the Sanat Kumars, and he put so much sattva that they didn't want to even grow old. So the next time he created, he put a dose of rajas. And then Narad Muniji, and that's why Naradji is going all over the world. But still very, very sattvic. He also didn't want to progenate. So this Kardam Rishi is a little bit like that. Brahmaji made him to progenate, but he had so much sattva, He wanted to just sit and meditate. And that's exactly what he does. He sits and he meditates until so much tapas and purity he has reached that Bhagwan has to come and give boon. Ask. He says, I don't understand, Bhagwan, why I'm asking this. This must be your trick only. I want to get married. Bhagwan laughs. Exactly like you laughed. Bhagwan laughs and said, yes, it is my wish. It's not your wish. And he's almost looking at Bhagwan like, why? Why are you doing this to me? I don't want to get married. But you've manifested in front of me and then you've asked boon and that's what you make come out of my mouth. And Bhagwan says, yes, it's me who wants you to get married because people like Kardam Rishi who have such good values and virtues and an inclination towards wanting to meditate, they should have children. Those genes should pass down. And so Bhagwan wants him to marry. Also, Devahuti, who was one of Manu's, kept hearing about how great Kardam Rishi is, and she fell in love with him without seeing him. Rukmini ji had also done this for Sri Krishna. Just listening to stories, fell madly in love with him. And so she tells her parents she wants to marry. So I don't know if he'll marry because he's only been sitting and meditating, but why? And Bhagwan gives assurance that he will marry because now. So he tells Kardam Rishi, it's my wish, so you marry for me, but don't worry, I will be born as your son. After that, you can go take sannyas and I will look after my mother. And so that's exactly what happens. Manu and Shatarupa bring Devahuti and she shies Kardam Rishi and she's already very besotted and she's anticipating, will he say yes? Will he say yes because he promised Bhagwan, so he says yes. And there was no planning. They got married there and then. No invitation to go out, no destination, no booking of venue, no caterers, no. They got married there and then, overdone. Like Manu and Shatarupa would have been like emperor, king. And Kardam Rishi didn't have. So she's gotten married to him under tree. So she has to sleep under tree. There was no shower. He bathes in the river. She has to bathe in the river. After the marriage, straight, from after doing fairas, he goes and sits and meditates. He doesn't even look at her. He wanted to see how much tapas she could do. But Bhagwan had already told him, Bhagwan himself is child, which means she has to be pure enough to be able to be Bhagwan's mother. And so, tapas, years and years and years. He just doesn't look at her. But she never once complains. She serves and serves. She gets all the puja things ready. He comes and does puja. He goes, she cleans up everything. She'll make sure she gives it to him. He'll eat. He doesn't look at her. She didn't complain. She just kept doing. And realizing her heart became so pure, so selfless. And finally, one day, he looks at her and says, I'm very pleased with you. Ask whatever you would like to ask. She's so shy. Really, Devahuti is like your perfect, Bollywood Indian shy bride. Because I don't think any brides are actually shy. She says the purpose of marriage is union. If you're really asking me what I want in my heart, that's what I wanted from the beginning. And so he had already understood and he has to fulfill his promise to Bhagwan. And so he says, Yes. And then he builds, like this is the mental strength that our rishis have. He builds his craft with just his thoughts. And the description, many different layers. It has garden, it has swimming pool, it has spa. You think I'm making this up. I am not adding masala. Usually, sometimes I add masala, but this I'm not adding. The description adds all these things. He built us just using his mind. And they go in it and all over the world to see all the things she wanted to see. But sorry, one important thing. Before the life that she had asked for, there's a pool of exhalia. What's that? When you dip in it and come out young? Alex. Yeah, that. So she goes into the pool and she comes out young, beautiful, with because after doing so much tapas, she had become so. Then he understands that looks pretty, so he also goes. He also dips in there, comes out with six pack and making sure he's as desirable as can be. And so thoroughly they enjoy. And that description we don't need to go in because we are focusing on Bhagwan. Although some of you look like y'all want that description only. No, tell us more about this aircraft. No, you go read the Bhagavatam. They have 9 daughters, they get them married, and then finally Rishi says to her, okay, enough now. Because desires will only lead to more desire. Now, he wasn't unfair. He made her do tapas for, I don't know exact years, let's say 20 years. They enjoyed also for 20 years. He was fair. She'd have earned. This is another thing. Then it's going to be more emphasized in the next canto than in this canto. But when we are devoted, work sincerely, desires get fulfilled. It's not that Bhagwan never fulfills desires. In fact, he usually always does. And sometimes it appears to us that he didn't listen to what I want. But we can't see the big picture. We also don't always remember what we asked for previously. And here, the only thing I'm saying is that if we zoom out, we'd see so much. But right now, we're not zoomed out. Yeah. So she says, my daughters are gone, and you also going to go, then I'll be left alone. You at least give me a son. And then Kardam Rishi remembered, oh yes, this is the most important. The son has to come because Bhagwan has to come as my son. You know, in the Ramayana, how much attachment Dashrath Maharaj has for Ramchandraji? He can't bear Ramchandraji leaving the room. He wants to be able to see Ramchandraji every moment, every day. And Kardam Rishi is exact opposite. She gets pregnant. We know it's Bhagwan because the woman is pregnant with an avatar. There's a different glow. The minute he's born, Kardam Rishi bows down to the baby. Doesn't say my son. Says, I have fulfilled my duty. I now take your leave. And goes to do tapas. Now Bhagwan is his son. He's gone off to do tapas. We'll finish the story first. He grows beautifully. Devahuti asks him a question. He enlightens, he gives this knowledge. It's recorded as the Kapil Gita. Puja Guruji has written a commentary, Kapil Gita. In fact, even in the previous verse, I went through it a little bit where Parikshit ji was asking Shukdev Maharaj questions. At one point, there's a Chat Bhagavat. That also Puja Guruji has written because it's so profound. And it's just knowledge. It's not the story bit of the Bhagavad. Those are also available, but time's not going to allow me to go so much into the teachings, touch on one, two things. And Devahuti ji is enlightened. And look at how beautiful he is. She fell in love with, wanted only Bhagwan. What did she get? Both. And the quality that's the most beautiful about her is her honesty. There was no pretentiousness. When she had to serve, she served. Absolutely committed to serving. Didn't pretend to be different to what it is, didn't want different from what she didn't have. But when she got to ask, she asked. And there too, she asked what she felt. Yeah. And then if he was going to say no, he'll say no. Yeah. And so, and we blessed even to hear the story of their devotion. Now coming back to why did he go? Bhagwan himself comes as his son and he leaves. Here, part of the teachings of Kapil Gita is never get stuck with a form. The form of Bhagwan is truly, truly beautiful. Actually, any form, huh? Yeah. I mean, here in the Bhagavatam, with Krishna and his curly hair and his, they'll describe every eyelash. And there's detailed description of his toenails. They look like little pearls. The form can be so incredibly enchanting. But Bhagwan, he says, don't get stuck with the form. And so here, even though Bhagwan has come in a form, he didn't want the form. He wanted truth. That truth that never changes. And so he left the form to meditate formless. And he also did that tapas before he indulged to ensure that he's strong enough that that short distraction stays short. If the mind is not strong, if we haven't done tapas and then we indulge, there's no end to indulging. It becomes very hard to pull ourselves out of indulging. To pull ourselves out of indulgence, to be very, very strong. We already know this. You take out the phone, you'll think it's not indulging, but very hard. Told myself, and I've given this example also in so many talks, I'll finish what you took out the phone to do. Like, so you have a thought to do this. You pull out the phone, do that. But no, something will fit that, and then, what did I want to do? To be really strong, not to indulge. We did this, every January we do this challenge. And this year the challenge was give up something for only 1 week, huh? Wasn't the whole month. 1 week. Caffeine, alcohol, give it up for 1 week. I was talking to somebody and they were like, I'm going to definitely do your challenge, but some of the things you've said to do are very hard. And so, to yourself, forgive your enemies, make a list of 100 things you are grateful for in one day. So I thought, and so I was curious, which one do you find very hard? And she said, this giving up sugar. For 1 week, it's not hard. And she looked at me and she said, we are not like you. Now, maybe we can find, some people find it easy, but others find it like, just because I find it easy doesn't, but you can do it. You can 100% do it. Mind needs to be strong. And so Kardam Rishi here, he's like really lived, like never mind Bhagwan has come as he himself is such a, he ensures his mind is strong by doing the tapas first, does his duty. Even all his indulgence isn't even indulgence because he wanted indulgence. It was because it was sense of duty. And then he is able to leave. And then the last part here is bhakti. He describes that bhakti can be tamasic, rajasic, and sattvic. And because Bhagavatam is a bhakti shastra, there's many things in Kapil Gita. I'm only 2 points. This 1 point is because Bhagavatam is really on bhakti. So what is tamasic bhakti? Anybody? You probably won't even think of it as bhakti. And should I do this story? I'll do. They were 2 friends and they had a huge fight. And then, when we love someone and then we hate them, we hate. And so then everything became a competition between the 2. So one decided to do tapas. So of course that had to also be a competition. So they both sat in the same forest, but in 2 different corners doing, and they were, because it was competition, their tapas was also very, very auspicious. So Bhagwan manifested in front of them and said, I grant you a boon. And he said, are you going to ask him, is he going to get a boon also? And Bhagwan says, yeah, I was just going to go to him next. So he said, no, go to him first. Because whatever he asked for, give me double. So Bhagwan goes to this and manifests and says, you've done so much tapas, boon. So his first question was also, are you going to go to my friend? Enemy now. Frenemy, new word. He said, I already went. Oh, what did you ask for? He asked that whatever you ask for, he'll get double. So now he was furious. Now, what can I ask for? Because I definitely don't want him to get double. So he says, make me suffer. This is tamasic bhakti. When we actually ask. And you might think they can't be such. Apparently they are. Because Kapil Muni has mentioned it. When you talk about fanaticism, that's hurting other people also. Okay? And this can't even be qualified as bhakti. I can't love the Lord to hurt someone else. What is Rajasic bhakti? Most of us. Bhagwan, please, please, please. I want this and I want that and I want that and that. I want you also, Bhagwan, but since you are so compassionable, you can give both. And then the emphasis is on Sattvic Bhakti. And the example of Sattvic Bhakti is Vidur. And so this link between chapters, the story of Vidur is so sweet. Most of y'all already know it. Some of y'all already know it. Anyway, it's so sweet. Krishna arrives in Hastinapur to negotiate to try and avoid the war. Duryodhana has prepared a very big feast for Krishna to eat and says, please come. And Krishna says, only eat food that has been cooked with love. And so he doesn't eat the food Duryodhana gave him. His statement is very clear. I only eat food cooked with love. Arjuna thinks, well, where are you going to go? Just come here. And he said, no, I have a house. So he's surprised. Which house do you have here in Hastinapur? Vidur's. Vidur's not in Hastinapur. But Krishna goes and knocks on the door of Vidur's house. Vidur's wife, whose name I can't remember, is about to step into the shop. So she has a towel around her. The door. Oh, peeps. Krishna. So opens the door. Of course you have to come in. She's forgotten that she's wrapped in a towel. She's so excited that Krishna has come to the, come, sit. And then, Krishna's famous thing that, I'm so hungry. And so, but she hasn't bathed, so she hasn't cooked. Because, the tradition is you don't touch anything. And so now he's hungry. So she grabs bananas that are lying there. They are green, not yet ripe, but she just wants to feed him something. And so she peels them and she gives the skin. In her excitement that Krishna's come and I'm not ready, and she's so excited because, the food's not ready to feed something, and she's giving this, and he's eating. Ma, this is delicious, give me more. She gives the next skin. Vidur is in town because he comes now. Vidur opens the door and he sees his wife, and because he's so lost in the thought of Krishna, she hasn't even realized the towel has slipped. Not only, she brings him the skin of the banana. And Vidur says, what are you doing? She turns to look at him and she comes straight back, and now she's so self, and she is giving him the banana, and he takes it and he says, it's not as sweet. When she was lost in the thought, he was eating her love. He doesn't need food. He ever wants is our love. And so, Sattvic Bhakti. Sattvic Bhakti is what? Cleanses us, saves us from hell. This is the second point I'm going to refer to. Kapil Gita has many other points. These two. Hell is our immense sorrow. And here, this line, no one can hell permanently. Whatever hell we are experiencing, it won't last. And why be aware? The reasoning given here is sometimes vessels get so dirty, sometimes oil and things, and then we have to scrub them so hard. Sometimes they're not even that dirty, but we want them to really shine. And so he likens hell to, even Gurudev once said hell was like a washing machine, dishwasher, washing machine. One of those machines. They can be quite, in Singapore you don't use it. It comes out so sparkly clean. What is this suffering? Not always, but if it's we've prayed and we've held on to Bhagwan's feet and still there is suffering, then some kind of cleansing is happening. And it's not, deserve it, don't I deserve it? We won't know all the details because once again, we haven't zoomed out and we don't know how to zoom out. When our mind becomes elevated enough, remember those colors I was talking about? If we pass 5 colors and go into 6 colors and say, then we can zoom out, then maybe we'll understand. But right now, we're not able to zoom out, and so we won't understand. And so we can only hold on to just this itself. It won't last. And when you come out of it, you'll be cleansed. And so holding on to just this itself is bhakti. Because remember, when pain's too much, it's hard to hold on to love. In those moments, hold on to it won't last. So this actually concludes the 4th canto. And there's not enough time, so I'm going to make a start on the 5th canto because the 5th canto is very long. It's 4 stories. And the 5th canto is focusing on dharma, artha, kama. We've already touched on, like I mentioned in the 1st canto, the Bhagavatam then elaborates on each one of these more. The first story of the 5th canto is one that's very well known. Many of you might have heard it several times over, of Sati and Lord Shiva and Sati's father, Daksha Prajaya. I had always wondered, why is there a Shiva story in the Bhagavatam? Although Shivji loves Krishna, but it's actually not Shiva story at all. It's Daksha's story. Since it's a very violent story, we will finish it super quickly. Also, I mentioned Daksha is Brahmaji's son. And he's one of the ones that got a little bit extra dose of pride. So, okay, we do 5 more minutes. Like I said, I'm going to really do this one in fast forward. Sati is married to Lord Shiva, daughter of Daksha Prajaya. She's torn between the two. Daksha is very logical, a little bit rigid in his. Lord Shiva is full of faith and devotion and compassionate. And so when she's with Shiva, she's also compassionate and full of faith. And when she's with her father, she also becomes a little bit. And sometimes we do this. We have within us. Daksha doesn't like Shiva. Why he married his daughter to Shiva when he sure? It must have been Brahmaji's wish. It was Brahmaji's wish. That's another story. Never mind. But Daksha he didn't like Shivji. He didn't like that he had vibhuti. He didn't like that he went to Smashan ground. And then to top it all off, one day he walks into a court, and you know these meetings can be very boring. So Shivji closed his eyes and he was meditating. And so Daksha walks in and he doesn't even know Daksha has walked in, and everybody stands up at Shivji up because he's meditating. And Daksha starts galis. Culture, this arrogance, and a long list of kalis to Lord Shiva not standing up because he's the son-in-law and you should have. He's also Devata and you are just a human. He all these galis he is giving, and at the end of it all, he stomps out, totally like having a tantrum. And Shivji says, he's still a child. He doesn't listen. Zero anger. But Shivji's Nandi was there. And you know, children and their protectiveness of parents, so Nandi got up and said, but how dare you curse Daksha, that he will get a head of a goat because he's all about me, 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 and no. And then, is it Bhrigu Rishi? I think it's, he stands up and he gets angry. How dare you curse Daksha? And he curses Nandi. And then one after the other people are cursing. And he just walks up. He wants nothing else. Too much rajas going on in this environment for him. Anyways, now Daksha wants to really prove he felt Shivji, and so he plans this big havan and deliberately a seat for Shivji. Sati sees everyone going, says she wants to go. Shivji says, don't go. He's deliberately not invited us. He doesn't like me, and this time she's hearing it. She had no idea her father didn't like him because Shivji's never mentioned anything. And so she doesn't believe it. And she says, as you wish. That's all he says. She goes. She's insulted. Shivji is insulted. She can't bear that Shivji is being insulted. And then she says, I can't believe I'm your daughter. How can I continue living knowing that you are petty-minded and so arrogant and you're devoid of faith and I have to do with you and this body keeps me connected to you and so I free myself of this body, and she uses yogic fire and she burns herself. Shiva doots that have come with her are very upset that she's been insulted and she's burnt herself into the yogic fire, and they start causing havoc, and so there's a fight. Narad Muni, of course, knows the news before everyone else, and immediately that this has happened, Shiva thinks they've insulted her and his daughter he couldn't live, and he also gets angry, and then he plucks one piece of his hair and what? So easy to create a weapon of mass destruction. One thread of Shiva's hair, throws it on the wall, and Veerabhadra comes out. Veerabhadra can destroy the whole universe. One strand of Shivji's hair. And then Daksha wants to mess with Shivji. And then, so now Veerabhadra the Yagnashala and pulls Daksha's head out of his, throws it into the fire. There's no hope of getting that head back now because it's all go to anyone who even laughed at Lord Shiva, Veerabhadra, totally destroys. But then the devotees who were there, who were innocent, come running to Shiva and ask for this, and Shivji will forgive. And then he even says, I wasn't angry, but there's a line that we shouldn't cross. And so he also goes back to the Yagnashala. They take all the remaining puja stuff, they include it for him now. So the Yagna is back ahead for Daksha. But remember, his head is burnt into the fire, and so what head he has to get? Nandi's curse has to. Nandi cursed him, he'll have the head of a goat because he keeps saying meh, meh. And this all set, and it all works out well because Sati comes back as beautiful Parvati. But that's Shiv Puran. Coming back to Bhagavad Puran. Daksha's story is told. Puja is dharma. But if we do puja without Bhagwan, or if we puja with so much pride in our heart, there's no dharma. Not only puja, we do tea with so much pride in our heart, so much wanting to show. Even Ravana had anger. Well, not anger. Ravana chose to make Bhagwan enemy. But Ravana understood, respected Ramchandraji's glories. So much he understood that he never took Ramchandraji's name because he knew Ramchandraji's. So yes, he also kept Bhagwan as an enemy, but there still was appreciation of his. Here, Daksha actually thinks himself better. Worship, you can't do dharma. Think we are better than what we actually are. So important that we understand we are not better than anyone. We'll all find ways in which to think how we are better. I am better than you because I make. Do you? We'll come up with the silliest reasons. I'm better than you because I attended all days. You only came one day. I am better than you because I remember everyone's birthdays. I'm not even saying money, looks, those ones we already know people will get proud about, but we'll find some small way in which I am better. If we hold on to this feeling, we can't do dharma properly. Remember, Diti divides. Aditi, when we divide and we make ourselves better, we're using whichever criteria suits us. Huh? We've created division, asuric tendency. Then dharma will be compromised. We'll pause here. Yeah, Bhajan? Achyutam Keshavam Krishnadamo Achyutam Keshavam Krishnadamodaram Ramanarayanam Janaki Vallavam Ramanarayanam Janaki Vallavam Achyutam Keshavam Damodaram Achyutam Keshavam Krishna Damodaram Ramayanam Janaki Vallavam Ramanarayanam Janaki Vallavam और कहते हैं इन्होंने कहते मान आते नहीं तुम मीरा के कैसे बुलाते तुम मीरा के कैसे बुलाते नहीं अच्युतम केशवम कृष्ण दामोदरम अच्युतम केशवम कृष्ण दामोदरम रामायणं जानकी वल्लभं नारायणं जानकी वल्लभं कौन कहते हैं भगवान आते नहीं कौन कहते हैं भगवान आते नहीं, बेल शबरी के जैसे खिलाते नहीं, बेल शबरी के जैसे खिलाते नहीं। अच्युतं केशवं कृष्ण दामोदरम्, अच्युतं केशवं कृष्ण दामोदरम्, रामनारायणं जानकी वल्लभम्, रामनारायणं जानकी वल्लभम्। कौन कहते हैं भगवान सोते नहीं, कौन कहते हैं भगवान सोते नहीं, माँ यशोदा के जैसे सुलाते नहीं, माँ यशोदा के जैसे सुलाते नहीं। अच्युतं केशवं कृष्ण दामोदरम्, अच्युतं केशवं कृष्ण दामोदरम्, रामनारायणं जानकी वल्लभम्, रामनारायणं जानकी वल्लभम्। कौन कहते हैं भगवान नाचते नहीं, कौन कहते हैं भगवान नाचते नहीं, गोपियों की तरह तुम नचाते नहीं, गोपियों की तरह तुम नचाते नहीं। अच्युतं केशवं कृष्ण दामोदरम्, अच्युतं केशवं कृष्ण दामोदरम्, रामनारायणं जानकी वल्लभम्, नारायणं जानकी वल्लभम्। नाम जपते चलो, काम करते चलो, नाम जपते चलो, काम करते चलो, सत्य है ध्यान करते चलो, हर समय ध्यान करते चलो। अच्युतं केशवं कृष्ण दामोदरम्, अच्युतं केशवं कृष्ण दामोदरम्, रामनारायणं जानकी वल्लभम्, रामनारायणं जानकी वल्लभम्, रामनारायणं जानकी वल्लभम्। कृष्ण कन्हैया लाल की जय। सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः, सर्वे सन्तु कामयाः, सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु, मा कश्चित् दुःखभाग् भवेत्। असतो मा सद्गमय, तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय, मृत्योर्मामृतङ्गमय। ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते, पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। हरिः ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः। हरिः